Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I want to discuss a topic that dates back all the way to the Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z. And that is the question revolving around Buu, and more specifically his absorption ability with regard to the Supreme Kais. And the question of, did the absorption of every Supreme Kai weaken Buu? Or is this more of a misconception that a lot of people have with regard to what actually happened? Well, I'm going to be breaking that down in depth in this video using the original manga and also the Dragon Ball Z anime. But before I begin, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing and enabling notifications so you can stay up to date with all my future videos. Additionally, if you like this content, make sure to leave a like and let me know your own thoughts down below, because it helps this video to be seen by even more people. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So for those of you who don't remember, we initially learned about what happened with the original form of Buu after Goku and Vegeta went inside of Super Buuhan's body and began to remove all of the different components from within him, beginning with Gohan, Goten, Trunks, and Piccolo, before eventually finding that Fat Buu was also absorbed within Super Buu as well. This happened during the fight between the evil Buu and Fat Buu, which I'll be getting into shortly. But nonetheless, in terms of this, what happened was that Vegeta ended up removing the Fat Buu who was absorbed within the body of Super Buu from within, which caused him to then begin to revert back through his different forms. Now, notice when this happened, as Buu reverted back into a previous form that he had absorbed, which was Kid Buu with the body of the Southern Supreme Kai within him, his chi, according to Goku, actually increased, which I'm going to be talking about shortly in terms of how this plays into the situation. Now, when this happened, he continued to go back to his original form, as we could see right here. Supreme Kai, who was watching as everything was going on, says, "Oh no, he's turning back." And we saw him become, once again, the Kid or Pure Buu. And we could see it right here. Goku and Vegeta, they seem to not be impressed by the power of him on display anymore after he reverted back from the buff Buu, as we could see right here with the Supreme Kai, to this form. I talked about more in depth how strong Kid Buu was in my video about why Gohan and Gotenks didn't fight him, which you could see in the top right corner. But nonetheless, this is where we get an explanation in terms of how powerful Kid Buu was, but also in terms of his greatest ability that we had seen him use as Super Buu before this point, which was his absorption. And this with regard to absorbing the other Supreme Kais. The Elder Supreme Kai says, "What's going on?" And Kaioshin, which, would just go on to be Supreme Kai until he defused in Dragon Ball Super, said, "There were 5 Lord of Lords in my day, until Bibidi created Buu. I was the youngest and the weakest, and I escaped with injuries. But as for the other 4, 2 were quickly killed, the gods of the North and West." A lot of this we actually see expanded upon in the Dragon Ball Z anime, where we see the individual fights. Then the strongest, the burly god of the South, was the next to go. And Buu turned into that muscle man we just saw, says Supreme Kai of the 15 generations ago, and the Kaioshin says yes. So this was the first character that was absorbed by Kid Buu, which was the Southern Supreme Kai of the South, which would indicate to us that he must have been either more powerful than Kid Buu, or at least gave him so much difficulty that he decided to absorb him into his body. The next to be absorbed was the chubby but gentle Great Lord of Lords. Now, pay very close attention to this. Before this, Buu was pure evil, a failure that Bibidi himself couldn't handle. So that includes with the Southern Supreme Kai within him. Himself couldn't handle. But afterward, he calmed down to the point that Bibidi was able to bring him under control. Then the Elder Supreme Kai says, "So the souls he ate tamed him. Then this small Buu is the very first, most difficult one. Yes, he's lost the soul he gained. This Buu is evil incarnate." So this has led a lot of people to believe that every single Kai that actually was absorbed within Kid Buu ended up causing him to be diminished and weakened and tamed, as it's put right here by the Elder Supreme Kai, with each individual absorption. However, there are a number of different things that play into this that don't necessarily line up with that particular particular example. For example, with that being said, let's talk about the character of Fat Buu more specifically. He was first, of course, introduced early on in the saga that bears his name when he was introduced, and he was not at the level of someone like Super Saiyan 3 Goku when he fought him, nor was he necessarily capable of outputting his power to its maximum degree that we saw when he fights Goku as Kid Buu, or, of course, when we see him fighting as Super Buu, which I'll get into momentarily. However, in terms of Super Buu, what we end up seeing happening is that after Mr. Satan and B, the dog, were shot, Buu just snaps. He can't take it anymore, and the evil and the wrath within him has to be separated, kind of like what we saw with Kami and Piccolo before the events of the original Dragon Ball, when the Nameless Namekian split in half, with the evil and the good within him. What ends up happening next is that this evil Wrath, Skinny, or Grey Buu is formed. And it even explains right here, according to Toriyama's narration, Buu's anger swelled up within him until it popped out as another body. He has split into the Sweet Buu and the Buu of Pure Wrath. And I actually talked about this more in depth in a video about why Super Buu turned into Kid Buu rather than Evil Buu when he regressed back through everything. So as a result, what I would say is check that video out, but let's keep going in terms of seeing just how powerful this Buu is. Because when he split from Fat Buu, what ends up happening was that he ended up fighting and attacking him and actually easily defeating him because, as Toriyama once again puts right here, alas, sweetness stands little chance against concentrated wrath. Even the candy beam is nothing because the evil Wrath Buu just blows it right back at the Fat Buu, turns him into candy, chocolate, eats him, and then in turn becomes Super Buu. Now, with regard to Super Buu, the thing is that this is still Buu with all the exact same components within him, and yet this Buu is vastly more powerful than the Fat Buu was. And this is because the fact that he no longer has the sort of gentle influence on him that the Fat Buu had. Now, what's the gentle influence in this particular example? Well, that would have to be in relation to what we were just being told before, which is with regard to the chubby Great Lord of Lords, or the Dai Kaioshin, the Grand Supreme Kai. So, of course, the reason why Fat Buu, as we could see right here, looks like this is because of all the influence upon him from this Grand Supreme Kai. His power did not diminish or anything up until he had absorbed this Supreme Kai. The absorptions do not inherently make Buu weaker, otherwise he wouldn't do them. For example, as we see later on, when he is Super Buu and he concocts the entire plan in order to absorb Gotenks as a Super Saiyan 3 into his body because he was being beaten down and utterly defeated, as we could see right here, by Gohan when the two of them were battling. It wasn't really much of a fight. And yet, later on, Buu comes up with the idea to absorb Gotenks. Actually, it was during his fight against Gotenks, which I also discussed in a video you could see in the top right corner, where I discussed who would win between the two of them. Nonetheless, what ended up happening was that Buu knows exactly how his absorption works, which is why he does this all to begin with, saying that he wants their power and Piccolo's brains. And so he uses his absorption ability in order to incorporate them within himself, and in turn becomes, as we could see right here, the most powerful Jin of all time, past, present, and future. So he's referring to, of course, every single form he's ever had in the past, including when he was Kid Buu, as well as Kid Buu with the Southern Supreme Kai absorbed within him. So as a result, obviously, he would remember everything that happened in the past. This is him with an even greater mind, memory, and capacity in general like that. And he became way more powerful not only here, but eventually when he absorbs Gohan into his body as well, becoming Buuhan. So in every single example we see, when Buu absorbs a character into himself, he becomes more powerful than he was before, as he says right here, "Now I'm stronger than ever before, and with no time limit." Except for in the case right here when he absorbed the Southern Supreme Kai. Because the fact that he was so gentle and had such a strong good force within him that he basically gave the evil Kid Buu, who in the past wasn't even really corrupted when he absorbed the Southern Supreme Kai, he only accumulated and acclimated his power into his own body, but instead he gained a soul from this one, which inherently limited him, not in terms of, just his power, but mainly in terms of his capacity to output him. Instead, this Southern Supreme Kai, this Grand Supreme Kai rather, was always having a gentle, positive influence on him, which diminished him. However, when he became this evil Buu, this Super Buu, it actually reversed all of that. He no longer had that kind of inherent weakness within him that was holding him back. Aside from maybe you can argue that somehow he was limited from becoming the same form that he was before right here. But I think that mainly comes down to the fact that these Supreme Kais were actually still present within the Fat Buu, who we could see right here is removed from within Super Buu, whereas Super Buu himself was really Kid Buu, who had Fat Buu within him after he was absorbed by the evil incarnation of Buu's evil, which was the Wrath Buu that we saw before. So I know it's incredibly convoluted, but nonetheless, everything seems to imply that not every single Kai actually did this. Now, one of the main reasons why so many people believe that every single Supreme Kai weakened Kid Buu is because the fact that in the Dragon Ball Z anime, we're told that Kid Buu is on a whole different level from all of the Buus up until now. In the anime version, they try and make it seem that the Kid Pure Buu is in fact the most powerful of the Buus. And as a result, this means that a lot of people will in turn believe that even though Kid Buu purposely absorbed the Southern Supreme Kai of the South, likely in order to become even more powerful, because he obviously was having some kind of difficulty fighting him, otherwise why would he have absorbed him in the first place, it still somehow weakened him, and in turn made him weaker than he was before, which was this level of power right here when he fought against Goku. However, again, in universe and logically, this doesn't really make the most sense, especially in the manga continuity, where this line does not even exist. The anime, they added this scene in here, they added the entire fight between Super Saiyan 2 Goku and Kid Buu, as well as the fight between Super Saiyan Goku and Ultimate Gohan inside of Buu's mind as the projection, and a number of other things to, for some weird reason, make Goku and Vegeta seem like they were the most powerful ones at the end of the arc, even though logically in universe, everything else lines up to it not being the case. So when you really think about it, this is the only real thing that people kind of grab onto, and maybe if you want to try and say that that is the case for why they're saying this here in terms of the anime continuity, that maybe that would be the case, but in terms of the original continuity and pretty much every other scene that seems to indicate otherwise, including in the anime itself where they still have lines about how Goku is weaker than base Super Buu, everything seems to imply that not all of the Supreme Kais made Buu weaker, but rather was only this Kai right here, the gentle Supreme Kai, that in turn turned him into Fat Buu, that made him lesser, tamed, and in turn not able to bring out the full power of the Supreme Kais that he had absorbed within him. Although you do actually have to wonder if maybe that still was playing some kind of part in the Super Buu, even though he no longer seemed to be held back by the restraints of the Fat Supreme Kai within him, and maybe, just maybe, he would have been even that much more powerful as Buuhan, for example, or even the normal base Super Buu, if he in fact had not had that one as a part of his body to begin with. Although realistically, things probably would have gone drastically differently had he never absorbed this Fat Supreme Kai in the first place. And every one of our characters probably wouldn't have stood much of a chance against the power of the other Supreme Kai, the buff one that we see right here, because the fact that, like I said before, Goku and Vegeta were afraid of fighting the weaker version of the Super Buu within him, and this one is supposedly even more powerful than that. So if this is the Buu that came out of the shell, then every one of our characters probably would have been done for unless they fused pretty much immediately right then and there. So did all of the Supreme Kais really make Buu weaker? Well, all the evidence seems to imply otherwise. But with that being said, let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments. What do you think about this? Also, if you're new here, consider subscribing and enable notifications so you can stay up to date with all my future videos. Like this video if you like it, share it out with your friends so they can enjoy it too, and make sure to stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.